Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. Today I'm going to discuss the latest with more NBA players testing positive for COVID, players opting out of the restarts of the NBA and the MLB respectively. The KBO will look back on this morning's results and look ahead to tomorrow. Same with soccer, go over yesterday's results, look ahead to today's matches, and my 2013 top 10 NFL players and games. We'll start with the COVID cases that seem to be rising in the NBA. The latest player to test positive for COVID, DeAndre Jordan of the Brooklyn Nets, and now he has opted out of the NBA restart in Orlando, and Brooklyn's going to have to sign somebody to replace him. That is a big loss for the Nets in terms of a veteran who is a good defensive player, somebody who isn't as good as he was with the Clippers, but he's still a locker room presence. He's still a veteran that could help. Although Jared Allen at this point is probably better equipped to start at the point of his career rather than DeAndre Jordan. Like I said, this is not the DeAndre Jordan of old, but it's not like a huge loss, but it's a loss for Brooklyn nonetheless. Spencer Dinwiddie also tested positive for the coronavirus, and he's strongly considering opting out of the NBA restart. Dinwiddie would be a bigger loss for Brooklyn than Jordan, only because Dinwiddie is somebody that could either start or come off the bench, and in this case start because Kyrie Irving's not going to be involved in the restart, and really put up 20 a game on a consistent basis. So that would be a huge loss for the Brooklyn Nets if Spencer Dinwiddie were to opt out of the restart. And in terms of Major League Baseball players opting out, Mike Leake of the Arizona Diamondbacks decided to opt out of the MLB restart. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, so he doesn't want to take any chances. Ian Desmond also opted out of the MLB restart. Those are two recognizable names if you're a baseball fan, but two names that aren't superstar players and pitchers, respectively. So, those two players from the NL West have opted out. I think the bigger loss for their respective team is Mike Leake for the Diamondbacks, who's supposed to be their number 3 or number 4 starter, depending on how you feel about some other guys in the rotation, notably Zach Gallen, who they got in the Jazz Chisholm trade last summer. And then you obviously have Robbie Ray, and you have Madison Bumgarner there now, replacing the traded Zach Greinke. And I obviously think the Madison Bumgarner is better than Zach Greinke. So you got Bumgarner there. Your number 2. I could totally see Gallen being their second best starter, but right now it's probably Robbie Ray and then Gallen as your top 3. Gallen probably would have been 3rd or 4th, probably number 4 if Leake decided to come back. But that's a big loss for the Diamondbacks, and that opens up an opportunity for some other guys on their roster to potentially get a spot in their rotation. Maybe John Duplantier, their prospect that was highly touted a couple years ago but has sort of dropped off because of emergence of other prospects and him not really graduating to the big leagues yet, but has already seen some big league experience, so maybe he could be a part of their rotation. And obviously, if more players decide to opt out of their restarts, I'll have them updated for you on the podcast. And then it came out that 26 players tested positive for COVID-19 in the NHL, but it says it's not really known what teams per se, but that also came out today as well. And I still think that sports will be back. Adam Silver said it best the other day. We need to learn to live with this virus. The PGA commissioner also said it as well. They're right. We need to learn how to live with the virus, and obviously Silver also trusts his health people, which is a good thing. And hopefully cases start to go down where they're up right now in states like Arizona, Florida, and Texas most notably. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks they drop a little bit, and some players in those respective states in all the sports could feel a little better about coming back to restart and whatnot. Now I'm going to go over the KBO results from yesterday and look ahead to tomorrow, or I should say today, and look ahead to tomorrow. So the Eagles and the Tigers were postponed due to rain, and we don't know if there will be a doubleheader tomorrow or Thursday yet. LG Twins over the KT Wiz 4-3. The Latte Giants defeat the NC Dinos 10-8. Good for Latte there. You had the Lions over the Wyverns 4-1, and the Heroes over the Bears 11-2. Tomorrow, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. in Korea, you have the Wiz and the Twins. I am going to go with the Wiz here on the road. You have the Bears and the Heroes. That's quietly a pretty decent matchup. I think the Bears will bounce back and get the win here on the road. The Wyverns and the Lions. The Lions are playing a lot better. They won again yesterday or today. I'm going to say they do it again. And then the Giants and the Dinos. I am going to go with the Dinos to bounce back at home. And then you have the Tigers and the Eagles. The Tigers should be able to win easily. The Eagles are the worst team in the KBO. So I'm going to go with the Tigers at home. Now I'm going to go over the soccer games from yesterday and look ahead today. I'm going to start with La Liga. Getafe over Real Sociedad 2-1. Getafe gets the win and improves to 14-10-8, and Real Sociedad drops to 14-5-3. 3 games today, 1:30 p.m. So 8 minutes until kickoff. You have Mallorca and Celta Vigo. This is tough because both of these teams are not very good. I'm going with Celta Vigo. They're just a little bit better in goal. So give me Celta Vigo to win there. I just think that they're better defensively and they're better behind the net. So give me Celta Vigo on the road against Mallorca. Leganes and Sevilla at 3 o'clock. I'm going with Sevilla here. They're just way better, and they should win that match by multiple goals. So give me Sevilla on the road. Barcelona and Atletico Madrid at 4 o'clock today. That is a big-time matchup between two of the best 3 teams in the league. I am going to go with Barcelona. They're just better. They have the better players. And I'm going to go with Barcelona, led by the great Lionel Messi, to win today against Atletico Madrid at home. And now to the Premier League. 1 game yesterday, Burnley over Crystal Palace, 1-0. Burnley goes to 13-6-13. Crystal Palace drops to 11-9-2. 1 game today, you have Brigden and Manchester United at 3:15. This is a no-brainer. Manchester City's going to smoke them. Smoke them. They're just better than Brigden, and Manchester City needs to really get themselves together after losing their last time out. So, give me Manchester United. And actually, no, they didn't lose their last time out. That was Manchester City. But United needs this game. They shouldn't be losing to inferior teams. Sorry about that. I just confused United and City. But United's on the road, though. I do think they'll win this game. So give me Manchester United to defeat Brigden, and I think they will absolutely destroy them. Now I'm going to do my 2013 top 10 NFL players. This was a fun year in the NFL, and there were some guys that broke out that year, some guys that I think were a little disrespected that year, and whatnot. So here you go. Honorable mentions: Calvin Johnson, Detroit Lions. The Lions were not good that year, but Calvin Johnson was the best receiver in the league. Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks. It hurts to leave him off the list, the actual top 10 list, but he has to be mentioned. They were the 1 seed that year, and they won the Super Bowl that season, although 2014 was the calendar year they won that Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers. He missed most of that season, but it's still Aaron Rodgers, and he was still the best quarterback in football at the time, between him and Tom Brady. J.J. Watt, Houston Texans. The Texans sucked that year, so that's why J.J. Watt didn't make the top 10. And A.J. Green, Cincinnati Bengals. Green was awesome, and the Bengals were in the midst of a cute little run there in terms of regular season success. And now my top 10. 2013 NFL players. Number 10, Jamal Charles, Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, that was like their coming out party in the Andy Reid era. It was year 1, and Jamal Charles was just awesome, and I think people forget about him as an awesome running back. 9, LaShawn McCoy, Philadelphia Eagles. I was going to give the Eagles spot to Nick Foles, but that was Nick Foles' first year, and he was awesome. And then he obviously was awesome when they won the Super Bowl. But people tend to forget how great LaShawn McCoy was. He was one of the best 3 running backs in football at the time. Number 8, Adrian Peterson, Minnesota Vikings, another running back. He was the reigning MVP. The Vikings weren't good that year, but Peterson was awesome. 7, Drew Brees, New Orleans Saints. Brees helped lead the Saints to the postseason that year and made it to the division round, although they were a wild card. 6, Marshawn Lynch, Seattle Seahawks, another running back on the list. Marshawn Lynch was awesome. He was the focal point of the Seahawks offense that season. 5, Cam Newton, Carolina Panthers. This was Cam Newton's breakout year in the NFL, helping lead the Panthers to the 2 seed in the NFC. 4, Tom Brady, New England Patriots. The Patriots were the 2 seed that year, but that was because of injuries. But Tom Brady was making nobodies look decent. 3, Richard Sherman, Seattle Seahawks. I strongly felt that he was the best cornerback in the league at the time, and even defensive player, if you ask me. He obviously was the leader in that secondary, and obviously in 2014 calendar year, although that same season in the NFC title game picks off Colin Kaepernick, as Kaepernick was trying to get to Michael Crabtree in the end zone. We all know what happened there, as I talked about it when I did my 2014 top 10 games. 2, Colin Kaepernick, San Francisco 49ers. Colin Kaepernick, to me, was really good in 2013. I thought that was his best year. Helped lead the 49ers to the playoffs, although it was a wild card. But they were a wild card because they lost the tiebreakers, Seattle. And there was a couple games where they had some injuries and bad luck that cost them the division title. But I really thought that was Kaepernick's best season. I'm not a big Kaepernick fan as a quarterback. I felt that he was a little overrated, but he was really good in 2013. But so I'm going to give him credit here on the list. And number one, Peyton Manning, is if there's any doubt. So Peyton Manning, was the MVP in 2013. Should have been the MVP in 2012, but they gave it to Adrian Peterson because he single-handedly got the Vikings to the playoffs with bad quarterback play. So they gave it to Adrian Peterson, and plus he was coming off that injury and had one of the best ever seasons by a running back. So they gave it to him instead of Peyton Manning, but it should have been Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning is number one in 2013, hit over 50 touchdown passes that season, and that was his last great year in the NFL. And now my 2013 top 10 games. Before I say the top 10, I have 7 honorable mentions. There are so many good games that season. Broncos-Colts, Week 7. Colts come away with the 39-33 win in Peyton Manning's return to Indianapolis, where the Colts did a nice thing for him, and the fans rightfully gave him a standing ovation. Cowboys-Lions, Week 8. The Lions come back to beat the Cowboys 31-30 in a game where the Cowboys should have won. The Cowboys should have won the NFC East that year, if you ask me. And you could argue Tony Romo should have been at least an honorable mention on that list that I just did with the top players. But that was one of the many games that the Cowboys blew that season. But the Lions do deserve credit for that comeback. Chargers-Chiefs, Week 12. 41-38 San Diego win in a shootout in primetime to defeat Alex Smith and the Chiefs. Patriots-Panthers, Week 11. 24-20 Panthers win on Monday Night Football. Coming in that game, nobody was believing in Carolina. Oh, they're a fluke. Everyone's overrating them because they beat the Giants, and that Giants team was very overrated that year, although they went 7-9. And like people were overreacting to the Panthers like they were this great thing, and they beat Eli and the Giants, and what was the beginning of the end for Eli Manning in reality. But then we know what happened. Odell comes, resurrects his career for a few years. But that's another story for another day. So the Panthers had a lot to prove in that game against the Patriots on Monday Night Football, and they came out. And I remember Brady threw an interception late in that game. I want to say it was to Luke Kuechly, and the Panthers came away with a big-time win to prove to everybody that they were for real. Packers-Bengals, Week 3, 34-30 Cincinnati win. This was one of Andy Dalton's finest moments. The Bengals were down by 3 touchdowns, and Andy Dalton and A.J. Green led the way to a comeback victory over Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. So that was a big win for Andy Dalton at the time. Ravens-49ers, Super Bowl 47. 34-31 Ravens win. Ravens had the big lead, then the power went out. And don't forget, this was in the calendar year 2013, not the 2013 season. That's what these countdowns are all about. The calendar year, not necessarily the season of the year. So, power goes out, and then the 49ers come back, and then 49ers, you could argue, should have won the game, but give credit to the Ravens defense for making stops, especially Ray Lewis. That was his swan song as he was retiring. And then obviously Joe Flacco won the Super Bowl MVP as well. So we could have had the Falcons-Patriots situation in this Super Bowl, but it didn't happen. The Ravens made the stops that they had to make. And then the last honorable mention, Packers-Cowboys, Week 15, 37-36 Green Bay win. That was another game that the Cowboys should have won. They had a 21-point lead against, not Aaron Rodgers, Matt Flynn and the Green Bay Packers. And Flynn led the Packers to a come-from-behind win, which set up a dramatic Week 17 game that the Packers had with Rodgers back in the lineup, which we'll get to in the top 10. So yeah, you got what I was saying before, that the Cowboys should have won that division. That was another game they blew. Now we're home for that game. That Detroit game, they were on the road. But this game was at home. That game they blew. They blew the Lions game, and they had Romo not gotten injured. We'll get into this in the countdown. Another game as well that they probably would have won had Tony Romo not been injured for that particular game. So that Cowboys team, instead of 8-8, they should have been, in theory, 11-5 or 10-6. And now to the top 10. Number 10, Seahawks, Falcons, NFC divisional round, 30-28, Falcons win. Falcons were up big. Seahawks come storming back, take the lead at one point, and then Matt Bryant hits the game-winning field goal with 6 seconds left to send the Falcons to the NFC title game. And that was a big moment for Russell Wilson, although it came in defeat. Vikings-Ravens, Week 14, 29-26, Baltimore win in the snow. This was a crazy game. Back and forth, Cordell Patterson making plays for the Vikings, Adrian Peterson. And it was obviously at the time the reigning Super Bowl champs who were fighting for their playoff lives at the time. So that was just a great game in the snow, back and forth, fun. 8th, 49ers-Falcons, NFC title game. 28-24 San Francisco win. This game, the Falcons had the lead. San Francisco came from behind and won the game. And that sent them to the Super Bowl. And Colin Kaepernick was just tremendous in that game. Seahawks-49ers, speaking of Colin Kaepernick. Week 14, 19-17, defensive battle. 49ers came out on top. David Akers making big kicks. And that was a big win for San Francisco at the time as they were battling with the Seahawks for the NFC West title. 6, Eagles-Cowboys, Week 17, 24-22, Eagles win. They win the NFC East. Had Tony Romo not been injured, the Cowboys probably would have won that game and won the division at 9-7. But Philadelphia came out on top and won the division at 9-7. Nick Foles played very well in that game. The starting quarterback for the Cowboys in that game, I want to say it was Matt Moore, if you ask me. Maybe it was somebody else, but whomever was the backup for Tony Romo played very well in that game. And the Cowboys could have won that game and won the division. And then Romo would have been back for the postseason for a home playoff game. They probably would have lost to the Saints, Romo or not. But if Romo was there, they probably would have been in a shootout with the Saints and Drew Brees. Although Brees and the Saints were in a shootout. I don't remember if it was a shootout per se with Foles and the Eagles, or if it was a low-scoring game. I'm going to double-check that NFL games list. Yeah, it was a borderline shootout. 26-24 was the final score, but that was in 2014 on that top games list. But, yeah, as I said, the what-if of the Cowboys from 2013, 2 games they blew because of their defense, and then Tony Romo was hurt with the Week 17 game against Philly, although they could have won that game too. And if those 3 games were all wins, they go 11-5, and they're in the postseason and win that division easily. And they should have won that division easily. They were the best team in that division, but they blew it, just like last year, and just like a bunch of other years for the Cowboys. It feels like in the Jason Garrett era. But there were some years, I know this is another day conversation, but there were some years that the Cowboys overachieved with Jason Garrett, but we'll save that for another podcast. Number 5, Packers-Bears, Week 17, 33-28, Green Bay shootout win. The return of Aaron Rodgers. Jay Cutler and the Bears, it looked like they were going to win the game and win the NFC North. And then Rodgers leads the Packers comeback as the Packers win the NFC North title in the game where Rodgers came back and looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers. 4, Saints-Patriots, Week 16, 30-27, New England win. This was a fun regular season game between 2 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks in Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Now they're in the same division, which is very ironic. But Brees and the Saints were leading pretty much the entire way, and then Brady leads a comeback led by a bunch of no-name players with a lot of injuries. Julian Edelman was hurt. Rob Gronkowski was hurt. And he was a bunch of guys that you never even heard of, like Kembrell Tompkins, for crying out loud. And a fun memory of this day for Boston sports fans is that this was the same day you'll see in tomorrow's list. This was the same day as that iconic David Ortiz game-tying grand slam against the Tigers in that Game 2 in the ALCS. The same day. So that was a big, special day for Boston as two of its teams had iconic wins on the same day, although it was bigger for the Red Sox at the time because they were on their way to a championship, which we'll talk about in tomorrow's show when I do my 2013 Top 10 MLB games. Number 3, Broncos-Patriots, Week 12, 34-31 New England win. New England has some of their guys back. Peyton Manning and the Broncos come to town. Broncos obviously otherworldly offensively. Their defense was suspect. Brady leads a comeback. And they were down double digits, if I'm not mistaken, to Manning in Denver. And then they came from behind and won that game in overtime. I remember the Broncos punt returner fumbled, and the Patriots got the ball, and then Gostkowski kicked the game-winning field goal for the win for New England. And that was in Week 12. Number 2, Broncos-Cowboys, Week 6. Yet another game that the Cowboys should have won that season. They could have been 12-4. Oh, my God. So Week 6, and maybe that Eagles game would have been irrelevant for them had they won that game and the Lions game and that Packer game. But yet another game where the Dallas Cowboys blew because of their defense. 51-48 Broncos win. They won on a kick by Matt Prater at the buzzer in regulation. It was a great shootout between Tony Romo and Peyton Manning. Cowboys and Romo had the lead, but their defense couldn't hold it together. And a lot of people came away somewhat happy in a weird way for Dallas. The Dallas fans were like, oh, hey, we hung with Peyton and the Broncos. The Giants couldn't. The Eagles couldn't. And then, obviously, as we talked about a lot in this segment and the previous segment, that the Cowboys probably should have won the division, blew a lot of games like this one, like the Lions game, like the Packers game, like the Eagles game. But the Eagles game was no Tony Romo because of an injury. But maybe they win the Bronco game, they win the Packer game, and that Eagles game in Week 17 is just irrelevant. So, there are a lot of what-ifs with the season for the Cowboys that year. Jason Garrett should have been fired after that season. But like I said, different story for another podcast. Maybe a what-ifs podcast down the road. And then number 1, Ravens-Broncos, AFC divisional round, 38-35, Baltimore double overtime win. This was a great win for Joe Flacco and the Ravens. I remember Flacco made a big play on 4th down to keep that game alive. And then ultimately, Justin Tucker kicks the game-winning field goal in double overtime to send the Broncos to the AFC title game. And then they ultimately went to New England and beat the Patriots pretty good the next weekend. So, and then they wound up winning the Super Bowl in 2013, although 2012 season. All right, so that's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with the latest with the COVID and the more positive tests, if any other players opt out. KBO soccer, I'll give my pick for the Rocket Mortgage golf tournament for the weekend as well. And I'll do my 2013 Top 10 MLB players and games as well. Hope you guys have a great day, everybody.